Today I have the brand new limited edition release by Spinnaker in for review. This is a fully capable dive watch that features an Orca whale on the dial, and when the lights go out, this watch glows unlike any other. The quality and detail by Spinnaker is usually very high, so have they lived up to the high expectations? So this new Spinnaker release is indeed a limited edition model. It comes in two different variants, the Orca Black and the Beluga Blue. Both versions are limited to 1,000 pieces each. The packaging is your standard Spinnaker box, with some extra artwork and branding. They come with a bracelet and an extra NATO strap in the box. Both models come in at £385, and this model is from the Haas family of dive watches. So this watch is in collaboration with the Whale Sanctuary Project, which is an initiative to protect the exploitation of whales and dolphins being used for human entertainment. There has been a huge uproar in recent years with these large creatures being used in captivity to make money, with these beautiful creatures being held captive inside concrete walls and pools that are way too small for their needs. Now, I'm not exactly sure how the Whale Sanctuary Project benefits from this collaboration, whether it be a percentage of profits or a donation by Spinnaker, but supporting this project is very much a value I believe is something important. And with this being a dive watch, it's rather fitting that these models pay homage to the deep creatures of the oceans. So the version Spinnaker has sent me for review is the Orca Black. This one is definitely the tamer of the two. Of course, we have a full stainless steel construction, including the crown, bezel and case back. The case itself features fairly rudimentary finishing, with a horizontal brush on the sides and a vertical brush on the lugs. There is a polished chamfered edge around the lugs, but that's about it. Nothing flashy here, just your standard finishing. This ticker comes with a H-link bracelet, with rather chunky center links that protrude out more than the outer links. The bracelet features a vertically brushed finish, with those center links having some polished edges at the top and bottom. The end links are solid and fit the case well with little to no wiggle. The clasp on this Haas model has a milled inner and pressed upper, with a twin lock system and a double push button deployment. The clasp does only feature 3 levels of micro adjustment. This is because we see a diving extension, which needs extra room inside of the clasp. The clasp also features a vertical brush with the Spinnaker branding on the folding lock. The quality of the steel here is high, there are no sharp edges and everything looks good. We see the use of a screw down crown that is signed with the Spinnaker M logo, and the water resistance on this Haas model is 300 meters, but you do pay for the capability with the thickness of the watch, but we'll cover that a little later in the video, so stay tuned. Covering the dial we have a slightly domed sapphire crystal that features Spinnaker's fantastic blue anti-reflective treatment, which I am always impressed with. The bezel is unidirectional and features 120 clicks. I believe the bezel insert is aluminium, which features 2 different timing scales. Flipping the watch over, we see a very unique case back, which is screwed down and features a spec sheet on the outer. It does feature a display glass, however underneath the glass there is a steel cutout of an orca, which means you can only see a small portion of the movement, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because the movement inside is the standard Seiko NH35 that we see in most micro brand watches. Because there is a steel cutout, Spinnaker hasn't bothered using a custom rotor, so this really is a standard off-the-shelf NH35 movement, and you can't see the balance through the case back, which makes it completely pointless in my opinion. I'd have much preferred a solid case back, which would have shaved some thickness off of the watch, which is a much more desirable feature in my opinion. But the NH35 inside of the Haas is super reliable, easy to find parts for, and cheap enough to service when the time comes. However, it is the dial of this watch that is the most interesting part. The Orca Black version has a black dial with a white chapter ring, with applied circular indices and a colour matched frame date window at the 3 o'clock. The centerpiece of the dial is the Orca print, which curves around the left of the dial surface. There is rather a lot of text on the dial, which I'm not usually a big fan of, but I think that this particular watch has executed it rather well. We see an applied Spinnaker logo at the summits with automatic and 300 meters printed underneath. Below the pinion we see the Whale Sanctuary Project text in ocean blue, and their slogan Back to Nature just below. I'm rather impressed with how coherent the colours work together. The watch does look busy, but in a detailed way that doesn't look too messy. The fenced post handset features a brushed finish finished, and is easy to read in both low light and bright situations. The second hand is the most flamboyant part of the watch, with an ocean blue colour, lollipop outer and the tail of the whale as the counterbalance. The second hand really does pop against the dial. One of the best features of this model has to be the loom, as it gives an experience unlike any other watch. Firstly, the whale on the dial is completely loomed, which really pops against the black surface. The whale fin counterbalance on the second hand also glows really bright. The chapter ring is completely loomed and frames the dial nicely, and the loom in the bezel insert probably has the brightest on the whole watch. However, the weakest glow on this piece unfortunately comes from the hands and indices, which have a rather dull dark blue glow. But in terms of the wow factor, that whale centerpiece glowing away is certainly an eye catcher, albeit useless in low light situations. Overall, the loom is okay. It glows fairly well at first, but fades rather quickly. Now, the wearing experience is where it might be make or break for you, because this is slightly larger than your typical dive watch. The Haas Orca Black comes in with a 43mm case diameter, which I have to admit is too big for my personal taste, but with the lug to lug being bang on 50mm, it somewhat works on my 6.5 inch wrist. However, it's the 15mm thickness that makes this watch look like a beast. It really does sit quite high above the wrist, especially from different side angles, and this is why I mentioned dropping the display case back. If this watch was a little thinner, it would be a lot more universal in fit. I'd personally recommend this watch for anyone that has a wrist size of 6.75 inches and above, and if you have the same size as me or below, it might be a little tricky to pull off. I will commend this piece though for the balance of the weight. Typically a watch like this would feel incredibly top heavy, but this Spinnaker Haas does not. It sits rather comfortably in the same place throughout the day. This Spinnaker is a mixed bag for me. There are some things that I absolutely love about it and some things that I'm not too fond of. Let's start off with the good. Firstly, I absolutely love this dial. I love the Orca artwork, I love how the indices sit slightly inside of the chapter ring, and the colour combination is very much to my taste. I'm also a huge fan of the dual coloured bezel. The silver and black work really well together. So in terms of the design, I think that they've nailed it. However, I do have a couple of things that I dislike. Firstly, the movement. As Spinnaker is now becoming a more established brand, I'd like to see them move away from the NH35. This watch would highly benefit from a much thinner Miyota 9000 series movement inside of it, because at 15mm thick, I just don't see the trade-off, as there are tons of watches that have 300 meters or more and they are considerably thinner than this watch. And finally, I know this is a minor thing, but I just want rid of diving extensions. Give me more micro adjustment and ditch the flimsy extension. Nobody uses them where we would actually use the micro adjustments. Let's run through some final points of consideration and hopefully you can come to your own opinion on this new Spinnaker. So I think that this Spinnaker is a great watch for anyone who's looking for something a little different. The Whale Sanctuary Project collaboration is something that I feel is very positive and matches the vibe of the watch very well. The details have been executed to a good standard and the build quality is high and feels very solid. I'd be cautious of this watch if you have a smaller wrist, as it is heavy and large. Nearly £400 for an NH35 movement is a little steep, but it is a super reliable movement. I think with this model you're paying for that unique loom experience and the great cause behind it. The beauty of the watch is definitely there in my opinion, you just aren't getting the best bang for buck. But sometimes value can't outdo character, and this watch certainly has a lot of character. So if you're interested in either this model or the other version, check out the official Spinnaker website that I'll leave linked down in the description. And if you enjoyed this review and want some more watch content, then be sure to watch my video here on the best watches from 25 different watch brands.